Close your eyes and let the present day fade. Imagine the year is 1888. You are standing on a heavy stone doorstep in the heart of London. The air is cool, thick with the scent of coal smoke and river salt. Before you lies a city of 3 million souls, draped in a golden, gaslit fog. Tonight, we aren't rushing. We are simply walking step by step through the heartbeat of history. The year is 1888. It is late November, a month when the sun seems to have forgotten the city of London entirely. You stand at the threshold of a heavy oak door in a quiet corner of Bloomsbury. Before you turn the brass handle to step outside, take a moment to listen to the silence of the house behind you, the dying embers in the hearth, the faint ticking of a long case clock, a scent of old beeswax polish. Now, you step out. The transition is immediate. As you cross the threshold, the air of the hallway is replaced by the heavy, damp, and strangely aromatic embrace of the London night. You are not merely stepping into the air. You are stepping into a substance. This is the yellow veil, the infamous London pea souper. To the modern mind, we call it smog, but to the Victorian Londoner, it was simply the fog, a living, breathing inhabitant of the city that transformed the familiar metropolis into a labyrinth of mystery. To understand the yellow veil, one must understand the coal that fueled the heart of the British Empire. Every one of the million chimneys in London is currently exhaling. From the grand marble fireplaces of Belgravia to the cramped iron stoves of Whitechapel, the city is burning bituminous coal, soft, oily, and rich in sulfur. As you stand on the top step, breathe in slowly. The air doesn't just smell of dampness. It carries the heavy, toasted scent of carbon, the acrid bite of sulfur dioxide, and the faint, sweet rot of the River Thames. When this soot meets the natural river mist rising from the water, a chemical marriage occurs. The water droplets cling to the microscopic particles of ash, creating a fog so thick it possesses a physical weight. It is called a pea souper, not just for its density, but for its color, a sickly, beautiful shade of ochre, amber, and pale olive green. You descend the stone steps, your leather boots making a soft clack against the damp pavement. You cannot see the street yet. You can only see the space about 3 feet in front of your face. Beyond that, the world dissolves into a glowing golden void. Reach out your hand. In a true Victorian pea souper, the air feels almost oily against your skin. It leaves a fine, microscopic residue of grit on your collar and your cheeks. If you were to wipe a white handkerchief across a stone railing tonight, it would come away streaked with a gray-black silt, the literal dust of the Industrial Revolution. The silence is the most astonishing part. The fog acts as a grand acoustic insulator. The distant rumble of a steam train at Euston Station is muffled, turned into a low-frequency hum that vibrates in your chest rather than your ears. The footsteps of a passerby across the square are swallowed by the mist until they are nearly upon you, appearing as a dark silhouette that flickers into existence and vanishes just as quickly. Look up. Above you, the gas lamps are the only anchors in this sea of yellow. A Victorian gas lamp does not provide a steady, clear beam like the electric lights of the future. Instead, it offers a rhythmic, pulsing glow. Inside the glass lantern, a small jet of flaming gas hisses softly, a sound like a constant, gentle she. Tonight, the light does not travel. It is trapped. Each lamp is surrounded by a massive, glowing halo of amber light, a sphere of visibility that extends only a few yards. As you walk, you move from one sphere of light into a tunnel of darkness, then into the next sphere. It is like walking through a series of underwater caves. The light catches the swirling eddies of the fog, making the air look as though it is constantly boiling, a slow-motion dance of vapor and shadow. How does one find their way in a city of 3 million when you cannot see your own feet? This is where the ancient wisdom of the Londoner comes into play. You begin to navigate not by sight, but by memory and touch. You feel the change in the texture of the ground. The smooth flagstones of the sidewalk give way to the rough, rounded set stones of the carriage crossing. You listen for the dripping. The fog condenses on the iron railings of the park, forming heavy droplets that fall with a rhythmic plink, plink, plink into the puddles below. In these nights, the city saw the rise of the link boys, though becoming rarer in the late 1880s. You might still see a shadow carrying a burning torch of resin and tow. They are the human lighthouses of the fog, hired for a penny to walk ahead of a carriage or a gentleman, shouting, "Light! Light!" to prevent a collision with a wall or a watery grave in the docks. As you move deeper into the Vale, the city begins to play tricks on your mind. A simple wrought iron fence looks like the blackened ribs of a sleeping beast. The shadow of a hansom cab, parked and horseless, looks like a prehistoric bird huddled in the mist. There is a deep historical mystery in this atmosphere. The fog leveled the social classes of London. In this yellow shroud, the Earl and the Flower Girl are equally blind. The grand architecture of the British Museum, just a few blocks away, is reduced to a series of ghostly, towering columns that seem to float in the air, disconnected from the earth. The air is cold, but it is a heavy cold. It doesn't bite like a wind. It seeps through your wool coat, settling into your bones. It encourages a slow pace. You cannot rush in a pea souper. To rush is to invite disaster, a stumble into a cellar opening, or a collision with a stone post. And so, you walk with the deliberate, heavy stride of a Victorian, your senses heightened, your breathing synchronized with the slow, swirling pulse of the yellow mist. You turn a corner, guided by the sudden increase in the snow of salt and old timber. You are approaching the river. Here, the fog is at its thickest. The Thames is a thermal engine, pumping warmth into the cold night air, creating a wall of white-gray vapor that clashes with the yellow smoke of the streets. You hear a sound low, mournful, and ancient. It is the foghorn of a barge struggling to find the entrance to the West India docks. The sound carries for miles, a deep moo-oom that defines the loneliness of the Victorian night. It is followed by the distant, metallic ting-ting of a ship's bell. These are the heartbeats of a global empire, invisible and ghost-like, operating in a world where sight has been replaced by sound. As you turn back toward the safety of the residential squares, the yellow veil seems to grow even heavier. The shops have long since closed their iron shutters. The peelers, the police, are invisible, their presence known only by the occasional flash of a bullseye, lantern cutting through the murk like a weak searchlight. You reach your doorstep. Your coat is damp, and your eyelashes are beaded with tiny droplets of condensed history. You take one last look at the street. The gas lamps are fading into the distance, a trail of breadcrumbs in a forest of amber smoke. The city of London is not a place of brick and mortar tonight. It is a place of dreams, of whispers, and of a silence so profound it feels as though time itself has slowed down to a crawl. You turn the key. The warmth of the hallway greets you. The yellow veil stays outside, pressed against the window panes, a silent witness to the sleeping city. As we leave the thick, stationary silence of the Bloomsbury doorstep, our journey moves from the visual mystery of the fog to the tactile and auditory reality of the Victorian street. In 1888, the ground beneath your feet is not the silent, smooth asphalt of the modern world. It is a complex mosaic of geology and engineering. To walk here is to interact with the very bones of the earth, rearranged by human hands to facilitate the thundering heart of an empire. Pause for a moment and look down through the swirling, amber mist at the ground. Most people call these cobblestones, but the technically minded Victorian engineer would correct you. These are granite sets. Unlike true cobblestones, which are naturally rounded river stones, these are hand-hewn. Rectangular blocks of igneous rock dot most of the stone beneath your boots began its life hundreds of millions of years ago in the quarries of Aberdeen, Scotland, or the rugged cliffs of Dartmoor. It was transported by sea and rail to the capital, where stonemasons labored to fit them together in a tight, interlocking pattern. This was done to ensure that the massive weight of the city's commerce would not sink into the soft, clay-heavy soil of the Thames Valley. Notice the texture of the granite. It is a speckled gray and pink, worn smooth by the passage of a million iron-rimmed wheels. Tonight, because of the pea super, the stones are coated in a thin, slick film of moisture and soot. As you walk, the sound of your leather soles against the granite is a rhythmic, hollow clack-thud, clack-thud. The gaps between the stones, filled with a mixture of sand and ancient dust, swallow the sharper edges of the sound, leaving only a low-frequency vibration that you can feel in the arches of your feet. In the distance, the yellow veil begins to pulse. The sound begins as a faint, metallic jingle, the sound of a steel bit against a horse's teeth, followed by the heavy, measured beat of hooves. Clip-clop, clip-clop. It is the sound of a hansom cab. In the late 19th century, this vehicle was known as the gondola of London. It was the ultimate expression of Victorian efficiency and elegance. As it emerges from the fog, the first thing you see are the two massive wheels. They are nearly 5 feet in diameter, tall enough to reach the shoulder of a man. These wheels are masterpieces of the wheelwright's craft. They are made of seasoned oak for the spokes and ash for the rims. But the most important part, the part that speaks to the city tonight, is the outer tire of cold-rolled iron. There is no rubber to cushion the blow. As the cab moves toward you, the iron tire grinds against the granite setts with a sound that is both a crunch and a ring. It is the sound of the industrial age, hard, unyielding, and constant. The cab slows to a halt beside you, the horse's breath forming twin plumes of white steam that vanish into the yellow fog. Let us examine the machine before we enter. The Hansom cab, patented by Joseph Hansom in 1834, was revolutionary because of its low center of gravity. Unlike earlier carriages, the passenger compartment hangs low between the wheels. This makes it stable, fast, and surprisingly easy to enter. But the most astonishing feature is the driver's position. The cabbie does not sit in front of you, blocking your view. He sits on a small, spring-loaded seat at the very back of the roof. From this high vantage point, he holds long leather reins that pass over the top of the passenger cabin. He sees the world from 10 feet in the air, navigating the fog by the tops of the gas lamps while his passengers remain cocooned in the dark cabin below. The horse, likely a Cleveland bay or a sturdy Hackney cross, stands patiently. Listen to the horse's heartbeat, slow and powerful. Feel the heat radiating from its flanks, a biological engine idling in the cold night. The harness is made of heavy black leather, polished with neatsfoot oil until it is supple. Every time the horse shifts its weight, the leather creaks a deep, organic sound like an old wooden ship at anchor. The cabbie reaches down and pulls a lever. The apron door's 2 wooden flaps that cover your legs swing outward with a well-oiled click. You step up onto the iron mounting block and slide into the interior. The environment changes instantly. The smell of the fog, the sulfur, and the soot is replaced by the scent of the cabin. It is a dense, comforting aroma of old wool, stale tobacco, and the faint, sweet scent of lavender water left behind by a previous passenger. The walls are lined with tufted blue velvet, which has the magical property of absorbing almost all sound. As you settle into the horsehair stuffed cushions, the world outside becomes a silent shadow play. The only connection to the driver is a tiny trapdoor in the roof. It pops open with a wooden clack, and you see a sliver of the cabbie's face. He asks for your destination in a low, gravelly London accent. You reply, and the trapdoor shuts, sealing you back into your private, velvet-lined universe. The cabbie clicks his tongue. The horse leans into the collar. The carriage doesn't just start. It engages. Because there are only two wheels, the Hansom has a peculiar rocking motion. As the horse begins to trot, the cabin sways forward and back, forward and back. It is a rhythmic, hypnotic movement that mimics the gait of the horse. Now, listen to the symphony of the street from inside the box. The hoofbeat. Against the granite, the horse's iron shoes create a 4-beat rhythm ta-tap, ta-tap. On sections of the road paved with woodblocks used near hospitals to keep the noise down, the sound changes to a soft, muffled thud-thud. Thud-thud. The axle hum. Beneath you, the iron axle is spinning in its brass bearings. Despite the grease, there is a faint, high-pitched mechanical singing that resonates through the floorboards. The jingle. Every few seconds, the brass buckles on the harness strike against one another, a tiny, silvery sound that cuts through the bass rumble of the wheels. This is the rhythm of the Hansom. It is a soundscape that hasn't changed for 50 years. To a Victorian, this is the sound of progress. To us, in this quiet night, it is a lullaby of iron and stone dot. As the cab moves through the narrow streets of the city, the sounds begin to bounce off the brick walls of the warehouses. The clip-clop echoes, creating a layered effect, as if a ghost carriage is following you just out of sight in the mist that we pass over a bridge. The sound changes again. The granite sets are replaced by heavy timber planks. The vibrations become deeper, more hollow. Below you, the dark, invisible Thames flows toward the sea, but all you know is the change in the rhythm. The cab feels lighter here, the wheels spinning with less resistance. The fog begins to thicken even more as we move toward the docks. The gas lamps are farther apart now. Inside the cabin, the only light comes from the small, flickering oil lamps mounted on the sides of the cab. They cast long, dancing shadows across the velvet. The rocking of the carriage, the warmth of the cushions, and the steady, unchanging beat of the horse's hooves work together to slow your heart rate. The journey is not about the destination. It is about the transition. We are moving through a city that is half machine and half animal. The iron of the wheels, the stone of the streets, and the muscle of the horse are all perfectly synchronized. The cab begins to slow. The cabbie pulls on the reins, and you hear the familiar scree of the iron rims grinding against the curb. The horse exhales a long, rattling breath. The motion stops. The rocking fades. For a moment, there is a profound silence, broken only by the distant, rhythmic tripping of the fog from the roof of the cab onto the granite below. You are safe. You are warm. The rhythm of the iron and stone has carried you through the heart of the night. We leave the hansom cab behind, the metallic rhythm of the horse's hooves fading into the yellow mist of the upper streets. You are now walking south, toward the edge of the world's most significant waterway, the River Thames. As you move closer to the riverbank, the air undergoes a subtle but profound transformation. The heavy, sulfurous scent of coal smoke begins to mix with something older and more primal, the smell of salt spray, wet timber, and the deep, anaerobic scent of river mud. In 1888, the Thames is not merely a river. It is a liquid machine, a dark, undulating conveyor belt that sustains the life of the British Empire. Tonight, however, the machine is in its quietest hour. We are approaching the Pool of London, that stretch of the river between London Bridge and Limehouse, where the great merchant ships of the world come to rest. You reach the Victoria Embankment, a feat of Victorian engineering so massive that it altered the geography of the city. Stand for a moment and place your hand on the river wall. The stone is Portland granite, cold, slightly rough, and damp with the condensed breath of the city. Think of the labor required to build this. Beneath your feet lies Sir Joseph Bazalgette's masterpiece, a labyrinth of brick-lined sewers and the district railway, all encased in this gargantuan stone shell. The wall descends deep into the riverbed, holding back centuries of tidal force. The river tonight is at high tide. You can hear the water a heavy, viscous sound as it pushes against the granite. It doesn't splash. It sighs. It is a slow, rhythmic shee as the current eddies around the stone projections. A sound that has repeated every 12 hours for thousands of years. The Thames is a tidal river, a characteristic that defines its personality. At this moment, the moon, invisible behind the thick London fog, is pulling the Atlantic Ocean into the heart of the city. The water has risen nearly 20 feet from its lowest point. Listen to the whisper of the tide. It is the sound of millions of gallons of water sliding past the pilings of the bridges. There is a low-frequency vibration here, a hum that you feel in the soles of your boots rather than hear with your ears. It is the sound of weight. The water is thick with silt and history, carrying the debris of the Roman docks, the medieval wharves, and the industrial Greece of the present day. It moves with a slow, purposeful dignity, like a giant turning in its sleep that peer through the mist toward the center of the river. The Pool of London is crowded tonight. You can see the silhouettes of the great merchant ships, clippers from China, steamers from the Mediterranean, and heavy barges carrying grain from the Baltic. They are not static. Because they are floating on a moving tide, the ships are alive. You hear the creak of hempen ropes as the hulls shift against their moorings. These are the sounds of wood under tension, the organic groan of English oak and Indian teak. Somewhere in the darkness, a chain rattles a heavy, metallic clink, clink, clink as a ship's anchor settles into the mud dot. The masts of these ships rise into the fog like the blackened skeletons of a drowned forest. In the Victorian era, the rigging was a complex web of miles of rope. Tonight, the wind is minimal, but the moisture in the air makes the ropes heavy. You can hear the rhythmic drip, drip, drip of water falling from the yardarms onto the wooden decks below. It is a slow, hypnotic metronome, counting the seconds of the night. The air along the Pool of London carries a library of smells. Because the warehouses, the great stores, line the banks, the fog traps their aromas. Walk slowly along the riverbank and breathe in. First, there is the smell of tar and resin, used to waterproof the hulls of the ships. Then, a sudden sweet drift of Jamaican sugar and molasses. As you move further, you might catch the dry, dusty scent of grain elevators, followed by the pungent, exotic bite of pepper and cinnamon from the East India docks. These smells are not sharp. They are muffled by the dampness, blended into a single, complex perfume that tells the story of global trade. It is a comforting, earthy smell, the scent of a world that has been gathered into one place. Looking east, a massive structure looms out of the yellow veil. It is Tower Bridge, currently under construction in 1888. It is a skeleton of steel and iron, not yet fully clothed in its iconic stone skin. Tonight, the construction site is silent. The steam cranes are dormant, their long necks tucked against the night sky. The bridge represents the transition from the old world to the new. You can hear the wind whistling through the exposed steel girders, a high, lonely sound that contrasts with the deep growl of the river below. It is a reminder that even as the city sleeps, it is growing, evolving, and stretching its iron limbs over the ancient water dot near the stairs of a dark stone wharf. You hear a human sound. It is the steady, slow footsteps of a night watchman on the deck of a moored barge. Thud, thud. His footsteps are heavy, his pace unhurried. He is a part of the river's rhythm. Occasionally, the silence is punctuated by the distant chime of a ship's bell, ting, 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 ting. It is the 4 bells of the middle watch. The sound is clear and metallic, cutting through the fog like a needle through velvet. It is followed by a long, mournful low from a steam tug farther down the river toward Greenwich. The foghorn is a deep, resonant bass note that seems to vibrate the very air in your lungs. A signal of caution in a world where sight has been extinguished. As you stand on the edge of the embankment, looking down into the dark swirl of the Thames, consider the astonishing depth of time here. The river has seen the transition from the ancient Londinium of the Romans to the soot-stained metropolis of Queen Victoria. The water you see tonight is the same water that flowed past the Tower of London during the reign of the Tudors, yet it is entirely new. This paradox is the essence of the river. It is constant, yet ever-changing. The whispering you hear is the collective echo of a million voices: the dockworkers, the sailors, the mudlarks, and the poets, all swallowed by the humid, heavy air of the Victorian night. The tide is beginning to slacken. The push of the ocean has met the resistance of the river's flow, and for a few brief minutes, the Thames becomes almost perfectly still. The whisper fades into a profound hush. The mist settles even lower, pressing against the surface of the water until the line between the river and the sky vanishes. You are standing in a void of gray and gold. The world is reduced to the cold stone beneath your hand and the slow, rhythmic breath in your chest. The river is at peace. The city is at peace. The weight of the water, the history of the stone, and the soft, damp embrace of the fog work together to pull you toward a state of total tranquility. The echoes of the Pool of London are no longer sounds. They are memories, fading slowly as you turn away from the water and begin the walk back toward the heart of the dreaming city. We leave the riverside behind, our boots finding the familiar, rhythmic thud of the granite sets once more. As we move away from the moisture of the Pool of London, the yellow veil of the fog changes. It is no longer a damp, river-borne mist. Here, in the heart of the commercial districts, it is a drier, thicker haze, infused with the breath of 1,000 coal fires. But something cuts through this golden gloom above us, and stretching in a long, diminishing line down the street are the sentinels of the Victorian night. The gas lamps. To understand the Victorian night, one must understand that before the early 19th century, darkness was an absolute. If you walked London in 1780, you carried a candle or a stinking oil lantern. But by 1888, London has been transformed by a subterranean miracle. Beneath the very stones we walk upon lies a secondary city, a vast, silent network of cast iron pipes pulsing with town gas. This gas is a byproduct of coal, distilled in massive retorts at the gasworks in Westminster and Nine Elms. It is a mixture of hydrogen, methane, and carbon monoxide. It is invisible, but it carries the energy of the sun, captured millions of years ago by ancient forests, then buried, mined, and finally released through a network of pipes to feed the flickering pulse of the city. Stand beside one of these iron giants. The lamppost is a marvel of Victorian aesthetics and functionalism. It is made of heavy, black-painted cast iron, likely forged in a foundry in the Midlands. Notice the design of the base. It is fluted like a Greek column, decorated with the crest of the City of London, or perhaps the VR of Queen Victoria. Near the top, there is a horizontal bar, the ladder bar. This is where the lamplighter would rest his ladder in the years before the long pole. Igniters were perfected. The lantern itself is a 4-paned glass box, often slightly frosted by the soot of the fog. Inside, there is no bulb, no filament. Instead, there is a small brass assembly called a burner. In 1888, the incandescent mantle is just beginning to appear, but most of these lamps still use a fishtail or batwing burner. The gas escapes through a narrow slit, and when lit, it produces a flat, broad flame that resembles the wing of a bird. In the boring history of London, The lamplighter, often called a leery, is a figure of quiet rhythmic importance. He is the man who walks the city into existence every evening. Imagine him 3 hours ago, as the sun began to dip behind the soot-stained horizon. He carries a long, polished wooden pole, tipped with a small oil flame, protected by a perforated brass cap. He does not stop to chat. He has a beat of perhaps 70 or 80 lamps. With a practiced, fluid motion, he reaches up. He hooks a small ring to open the gas cock, and then, with a gentle thrust of his pole, he introduces the flame. Poof! A soft, muffled explosion of light. He moves on. His footsteps are a steady, unhurried percussion against the pavement. By the time he reaches the end of the street, the beginning of the street is already glowing. He is a shepherd of shadows, pushing the darkness back, one lamp at a time. Now, close your eyes and listen. To the modern ear, light is silent. To the Victorian, light has a voice. The gas lamp produces a constant, rhythmic hiss, a sound like a very soft, perpetual she. This is the sound of the gas escaping the brass burner under pressure. It is a white noise lullaby that blankets the street, because the pressure in the pipes fluctuates as businesses close and more gas is diverted to residential areas. The lamps pulse. The flame doesn't stay perfectly still. It flickers and dances, throwing long rhythmic shadows that stretch and contract against the brick walls of the warehouses. The shadows of the iron railings move like the hands of a clock, swaying in a slow, hypnotic arc. It is a living light, a biological light, far removed from the static, harsh glare of the future. The light provided by these lamps is not bright. It is a warm, rich amber, a color that sits somewhere between the orange of a dying fire and the yellow of a ripe lemon. In the pea-soup fog, this light is scattered. The fog acts as a million tiny prisms. Each lamp is surrounded by a glory, a massive spherical halo of light that seems to float in the air. As you walk, you move from one pool of safety to the next. The space between the lamps is a no-man's land of deep indigo and velvet black. This lighting changed the human soul. It made the night accessible. It created the flaner, the person who walks the city just to observe. The gaslight gives the brickwork of London a soft, textured quality. The red bricks of a Victorian terrace look like glowing embers. The soot-stained Portland stone of a church looks like ancient, weathered bone. It is a light that encourages reflection, a light that asks you to slow down, not one of the most astonishing and yet mundane details of the gaslight era is the maintenance. Because the gas is unscrubbed, meaning it still contains traces of sulfur and heavy oils, the flame produces a fine, microscopic soot dot over the course of the night. This soot settles on the inside of the glass panes. A lamp lit at 6 p.m. is significantly brighter than it will be at 4 a.m. This gradual dimming is part of the city's natural clock. The light ages as the night progresses. By the time the first pale light of dawn appears, the gas lamps are tired, their glass slightly grayed, their flames burning with a weary orange hue dot as we continue our walk. Watch how the gaslight interacts with the architecture. A Gothic archway, carved with stone ivy and grimacing gargoyles, is transformed. The light comes from below, casting the shadows upward. The gargoyles appear to be peering down through the mist, their features softened by the flickering flame. The wet cobblestones, those granite sets we studied earlier, act as a dark mirror. Each lamp creates a long, shimmering streak of gold on the ground. If you look down, it appears as though the street is paved with bars of liquid light. This reflection is what gives the Victorian night its dreamlike quality. You are walking on a surface that is both solid stone and shifting light. There is a profound sense of security in the presence of the lamp. In 1888, the Whitechapel murders have made the city nervous, but here, Under the steady hiss of the gaslight, the fear recedes. The light represents the order of the Victorian world. It is a product of the corporation, the engineer, and the law. To lean against the cold iron of a lamppost is to feel the vibration of the city. If you press your ear to the metal, you can sometimes hear the faint, subterranean singing of the gas pipes, a low-frequency hum that connects you to the massive gasworks miles away. It is the heartbeat of London, a steady, mechanical pulse that never stops. Even when the rest of the world is asleep, the lamplighter is long gone now, perhaps sleeping in his small room in a back alley, his pole leaning against the wall. The city is left to the care of the gas dot we walk on, the flickering pulse of the city guiding our steps. The air is cool, the fog is heavy, and the rhythmic shee of the lamps is the only sound in the world. With every lamp we pass, the weight of the day falls further away. We are moving deeper into the Victorian night, into a world where the light is as soft as a whisper, and the shadows are as deep as time itself. The pulse of the gaslight is slowing your own pulse. The yellow veil is your blanket. The city is a cradle of iron and amber. We have left the amber glow of the gaslit commercial streets and begun the steady, slight incline of Ludgate Hill. In 1888, this is the traditional heart of the city. As we ascend, the yellow veil of the fog seems to grow even more luminous. The buildings on either side, the bookshops, the newspaper offices, the haberdasheries begin to pull back, making way for something gargantuan. Suddenly, the fog thins for a moment. And there it is, St. Paul's Cathedral. It does not appear all at once. First, you see the massive, soot-blackened base of a Corinthian column. Then another. Then the great west door, a portal of oak and iron that looks as though it could lead to another world. This is the masterpiece of Sir Christopher Wren, the sentinel that has watched over London since the ashes of the great fire of 1606. Pause at the base of the great west front. Place your hand against the stone. It feels cold, porous, and incredibly solid. This is Portland stone, a limestone from the Isle of Portland in Dorset. To understand this stone is to travel back 150 million years to the Jurassic period. This cathedral is quite literally built from the remains of an ancient sea. If the fog were to vanish and the sun to shine, you would see tiny fragments of shells and marine organisms, ooliths, embedded in the surface. In 1888, the stone tells a story of the Industrial Revolution. Portland stone is naturally a pale, creamy white, but here it is draped in a black and white pattern. The parts of the building protected from the rain are coated in a thick, velvet-like layer of black coal soot, the London carbon. The parts exposed to the wind and rain have been bleached white. This stark, monochrome contrast gives the cathedral the appearance of a ghost rising from the earth, a giant in a tuxedo of shadow and light. As you look up, your neck straining to see the pediment. Think of the word carved into the stone on the south side, resurgam. It is Latin for I shall rise again. After the medieval St. Paul's was destroyed in the Great Fire, Christopher Wren was tasked with building a replacement that would never burn again. He did not use wood where he could use stone. He did not use guesswork where he could use mathematics. The building you are standing beside is a triumph of geometry. Wren was an astronomer before he was an architect, and he treated the cathedral like a giant celestial instrument. The proportions of the columns, the height of the nave, and the curvature of the arches are all governed by the golden ratio. As you walk along the side of the building, your footsteps fall in a natural rhythm, dictated by the spacing of the pilasters. It is an architectural heartbeat, a stone pulse that calms the mind. The dome is the crown of London. In the thick mist of 1888, you cannot see the top, but you know it is there. 60,000-ton weight of lead and stone pressing down toward the center of the earth. What the casual observer doesn't know what is astonishing in its complexity is that the dome is actually three domes nested inside one another, like a set of Russian dolls. The inner dome, the one you see from the inside, decorated with the frescoes of Sir James Thornhill, the brick cone, a hidden, structural core of brick that supports the massive weight of the stone lantern. On top, the outer dome, the timber-framed, lead-covered shell that defines the London skyline. Imagine the silence inside that dark, hidden brick cone right now. While the fog swirls around the exterior, the interior of the cathedral structure is a vacuum of stillness. There are no birds, no wind, only the ancient drying mortar and the slow, microscopic settling of the bricks. The weight of it is immense, yet it sits on the London clay with the delicate balance of a spinning top. Higher up, beneath the curve of the inner dome, lies the Whispering Gallery. Even in the dead of night, the physics of this place remain active. Because of the perfect circularity of the wall, a whisper made against the stone on one side travels around the circumference, clinging to the curve through a phenomenon called specular reflection. If a watchman were to whisper a secret on the north side, his voice would glide invisible and ghost-like along the masonry to reach an ear on the south side. 112 feet away. In our night walk, we can imagine those whispers, the echoes of 300 years of prayers, footsteps, and sighs all circling the dome in a never-ending loop of sound, muffled by the heavy, damp air of the Victorian night. As you stand in the shadow of the South Tower, the time arrives. It is the top of the hour. Deep within the belfry, the mechanical clockwork, a forest of brass gears and heavy lead weights, trips a lever. There is a moment of tension, a mechanical intake of breath. Then, Great Paul speaks. Cast in 1881, Great Paul is the largest bell in England, weighing nearly 17 tons. The sound is not a sharp ring. It is a profound, earth-shaking thrum. When the clapper hits the bronze, the vibration travels down the stone towers, through the Portland stone foundations, and into the very ground beneath your boots. Listen to the decay of the sound. The note, an E-flat, doesn't vanish. It ripples through the fog, vibrating the moisture in the air. It is a heavy, bronze blanket of sound that tells the city that time is passing, but the cathedral is standing still. It is followed by the lighter, more melodic chime of the quarter bells. A rhythmic ting-tang. It sounds like a clockwork music box scaled up to the size of a palace. Beneath your feet lies the crypt, the largest in Europe. Here, the stone sentinel guards the ancient residence of the city. The air down there is different. It is dry, still, and smells of dust and cold marble. Lord Nelson lies there in a sarcophagus of black stone. The Duke of Wellington rests in a massive tomb of Cornish porphyry. These are men of fire and action, now reduced to the same stone silence as the Jurassic fossils in the walls. The crypt is a forest of low, heavy arches designed to support the incredible weight of the cathedral above. There is a boring but beautiful structural reality here. Every inch of the building is in a state of compression. The stones are pushing against one another, holding each other up in a permanent, motionless embrace. This state of tension creates a feeling of absolute permanence. As long as the stones push, the sentinel stands. We walk slowly around the perimeter of the churchyard. The iron railings cast in Lamberhurst in 1714 are cold and wet. The fog is so thick here that the top of the towers is completely lost. The cathedral has no top tonight. It is an infinite pillar of stone rising into a golden void. There is a mystery in this. St. Paul's is the only thing in London that feels larger than the fog. It is a mountain of human ambition. As you walk away, heading toward the narrow alleys of the city, the thrum of the great bell is still ringing in your bones. The stone giant remains behind you, its 1,000-ton eyes watching over the sleeping millions. It doesn't move. It doesn't breathe. It simply exists, a masterpiece of geometry and Jurassic stone, anchored in the London mud, whispering resurgam to the misty night. Your heart rate has slowed to match the heavy tolling of the bell. Your steps are steady. The sentinel is watching. You are safe. We leave the high, echoing silence of Ludgate Hill, and begin our descent toward the West End. As we walk along the Strand, the yellow veil of the fog seems to soften. Here, it is no longer just a cloud of coal smoke. It is beginning to carry the first hints of a hidden garden. It is now roughly 3:30 a.m. For the rest of London, this is the deepest hour of sleep. But as we turn into the narrow streets leading toward Covent Garden, we find a world that is just beginning to breathe. This is the stomach of London, the place where the city's hunger is met with the harvest of the English countryside and the exotic offerings of the colonies. As you step into the grand square of Covent Garden, you are standing on ground with a long sedimentary history. Once, in the 13th century, this was the convent garden of the monks of St. Peter at Westminster, a walled sanctuary of fruit trees and herbs. By 1888, it has become a cathedral of commerce, designed by Charles Fowler in 1830. Pause and look at the Central Market building. Even in the dim gaslight and shifting mist, its neoclassical dignity is apparent. It is a long, symmetrical structure of granite and brick, topped with a magnificent roof of wrought iron and glass. Listen to the sound of the fog here. Unlike the open streets, the market architecture traps the sound. You hear the rhythmic drip-drip of condensation falling from the iron rafters onto the wooden carts below. It is a slow, steady percussion that echoes the ancient monastic silence that once inhabited this soil. Breathe in deeply. This is the most astonishing part of Covent Garden at night. The air is a thick, humid soup of competing aromas. First, there is the heavy, earthy scent of damp soil, thousands of sacks of potatoes and carrots, still dusted with the dark loam of Lincolnshire and Kent. This is followed by the sharp, cooling fragrance of pot herbs, bundles of mint, thyme, sage, and rosemary, their leaves bruised by the journey, releasing their essential oils into the cold, misty air. As you walk closer to the central arcades, the scent shifts. You catch the sudden, bright acidity of lemons and oranges from Spain, packed in crates of thin, scented pine. Then, the deep, wine-like aroma of bruised apples, the Cox's orange pippin, and the Blenheim orange, filling the air with a sweet, fermenting warmth that feels almost like a physical weight. These scents are not fleeting. The fog holds them close to the ground, creating a sensory library of the Victorian world's botanical reach. Now, observe the movement within the mist. These are the market porters, the silent machinery of the night. Their work is a masterpiece of balance and steady, unhurried rhythm. In 1888, a Covent Garden porter is known for his load. Watch a man as he prepares to move a stack of wicker baskets filled with flowers. He doesn't carry them in his arms. He stacks them one on top of the other 6, 7, sometimes 8 baskets high until the tower reaches far above his head. He wears a muffin cap, a flat, reinforced leather hat designed to distribute the weight. Listen to his footsteps. They are heavy and deliberate. Thud, thud. He moves with a slow, swaying gait to keep the center of gravity stable. There is no shouting here. The work is too repetitive for unnecessary noise. There is only the rhythmic creak of the wicker baskets, a dry, wooden sound that speaks of craftsmanship and long nights of labor. The market is a world of organic materials. In the Victorian era, there is very little tin or iron used for transport. Everything is wood, straw, and wicker. Notice the pottles, the small, conical baskets used for strawberries and raspberries. They are made of thin strips of hand-split oak or willow. Thousands of them are stacked in the corners, looking like pale, wooden honeycombs in the gaslight. The crates are made of rough-hewn pine, held together with iron nails that have begun to rust in the London damp. Every time a crate is slid across the stone floor, it makes a low, rasping sound scrape that is immediately swallowed by the fog. These materials are silent, renewable, and carry the faint, lingering scent of the forests they came from. We move toward the southeastern corner of the square, the dedicated flower market. Here, the scented vapors reach their crescendo. Even in the darkness of 1888, the colors manage to bleed through the mist. There are buckets of deep red roses, pale white lily, and the vibrant blue of violets brought in from the nursery gardens of Middlesex. The flower girls, some of them only children, sit on the edges of the fountains, their fingers moving with mechanical precision as they bind small buttonholes with bits of wire and damp moss. The sound here is different. It is the sound of water. The flowers must be kept freshened, so there is a constant, gentle splashing of water into tin buckets and the rhythmic swish of a wet broom cleaning the stone flagstones. It is a clean, watery sound that makes the air feel lighter and more breathable. Beyond the square, the surrounding streets, Longacre and King Street, are clogged with heavy wagons. These are the growers' carts. They have traveled all night from the market gardens on the outskirts of London, places like Fulham, Chiswick, and Mortlake. The horses are resting now, their heads hanging low as they eat from nosebags filled with oats and chaff. You can hear the rhythmic crunch, crunch, crunch of their massive teeth. The wagons are piled high with greens, cabbages, kale, and spinach covered with heavy tarpaulins that smell of linseed oil and rain. There is a profound sense of boring regularity here. Every night for centuries, this same exchange has occurred. The country meets the city in the dark. The silence of the fields is traded for the gold of the metropolis. This cycle is as certain as the tide of the Thames, a steady, dependable heartbeat that ensures London will wake up to a full larder. On the edge of the piazza, a small, portable coffee stall sits under a gas lamp. It is a wooden box on wheels, lit by a flickering oil lamp. The scented vapors here are different again. The dark, bitter aroma of chicory-heavy coffee and the smell of thick, buttery toast warming on a small charcoal brazier. A few porters stand in silence, their breath mingling with the steam from their tin mugs. They don't speak much. They simply stand, absorbing the heat, their shadows stretched long and thin across the damp cobblestones. The sound of a spoon stirring a mug clink, clink. Clink is the only music of the hour. It is a domestic, comforting sound in the middle of the vast, misty market. We begin to walk away from Covent Garden, heading toward the quieter residential streets of the West End. As we move, the scents of the market begin to fade, replaced once again by the neutral, damp smell of the fog dot. The distant rumble of the carts and the rhythmic creak of the wicker baskets become a low hum, a background vibration that signals the city's preparation for the day. But for us, the walk continues in silence. The market has shown us the living, breathing side of history, not the history of kings or battles, but the history of the potato, the rose, and the porter. It is a history of repetition, of sensory detail, and of the quiet labor that happens while the world is dreaming. Your mind is now filled with the scent of mint and the sound of splashing water. Your steps are light. The scented vapors have calmed your senses, and the rhythm of the night market is now the rhythm of your own breath. We leave the lingering scent of Covent Garden's mint and earth behind, walking toward the quiet, dignified reaches of Mayfair and Marylebone. It is now roughly 4:15 a.m. In 1888, this is the hour of the deep night. The city's pulse has slowed to its minimum. As we enter the residential squares, the yellow veil of the fog feels different here. It is cleaner, thinner, and wrapped in a profound aristocratic silence. Before you are the great terraced houses of the Victorian elite. Stand at the edge of a gravel path and look up. These buildings are tall, narrow and imposing, built from the dark London stock brick that has absorbed a century of history. They represent the Victorian ideal of the home, a fortress of privacy and domestic order, against the chaos of the industrial world outside. Every house on this square is a vertical ecosystem. Beneath the pavement you stand on are the area's deep, stone-lined pits that allow light into the basement kitchens. Look down through the black iron railings. The kitchen windows are dark now, but the air rising from them still carries the faint, ghostly scent of the day's labor. Roasted mutton, boiled cabbage, and the sharp, clean smell of carbolic soap used to scrub the flagstones. The main floors, where the families sleep, are guarded by massive oak doors. These doors are masterpieces of the joiner's art, painted in deep Brunswick green or black gloss, and fitted with heavy brass knockers in the shape of lions or classical urns. Because of the damp fog, the brass has a dull, matte finish tonight, waiting for the parlor maid to polish it back to a mirror shine in a few hours' time. The most astonishing feature of these squares is the collective breadth of their chimneys. In 1888, every single room in every single house has its own fireplace. Even as the residents sleep, the hearth remains the heart of the home. Breathe in slowly. The air here is tinged with the scent of coalite and oak logs. It is a sweet, smoky aroma, far more pleasant than the acrid sulfur of the industrial districts. Because it is nearly dawn, the fires are in their final stages. The bright orange flames of midnight have collapsed into a bed of glowing red-gray embers. Inside the houses, the heat is slowly radiating from the cast-iron fire grates into the thick plaster walls. This is the thermal mass of the Victorian city. The bricks hold the warmth of the day's fires, releasing it slowly into the night. If you were to press your hand against the brickwork of a chimney breast, you would feel a faint, lingering pulse of warmth, the city's literal body heat. The windows of these houses are not like modern windows. They are draped in layers of defense against the night. First, there are the heavy, wooden internal shutters, folded shut and bolted with iron bars. Over these are the curtains masses of heavy silk or crimson velvet, lined with thick flannel to keep out the miasma of the London fog god. This creates a vacuum of silence. Inside those rooms, the sounds of the street, the distant whistle of a train, or the rhythmic thud of a night watchman are completely extinguished. The only sound is the rhythmic ticking of a marble mantel clock, or the occasional settling of a coal in the grate. This is the boring history of comfort, the sound of a world that has successfully shut itself away from the elements. In the center of the square lies the communal garden, a fenced-off wilderness of plane trees and laurel bushes. In the 1880s, these gardens are the lungs of the neighborhood. Through the fog, the trees look like ancient, petrified giants. The London plane tree is a fascinating historical detail. It was chosen for these squares because it exfoliates its bark, shedding the soot and pollution of the city to keep its pores open. As you walk past the iron gates, listen to the trees. The damp leaves don't rustle. They drip, plink, plop, plink. The fog has condensed on the high branches, and the water is falling in a slow, rhythmic percussion onto the gravel paths below. This is a private silence. Unlike the public parks, the square is a closed circle. The air here feels heavy and still, trapped by the surrounding walls of brick and stone. It is a place where time seems to have pooled and stagnated, a quiet eddy in the rushing river of London life. Occasionally, the silence is punctuated by a slow, rhythmic footfall. Clack, pause, clack. It is the private watchman hired by the residents of the square. He carries a bullseye lantern, a cylindrical tin device with a thick, convex glass lens. He doesn't swing it. He keeps it shuttered, only opening the slide to check a lock or a basement window. When he does, a sharp, narrow beam of yellow light cuts through the fog, illuminating the swirling particles of soot and water for a brief second before vanishing. Again, he is a part of the hearth and home ecosystem, the human boundary between the sleeping family and the unpredictable night. His presence is a rhythmic reassurance, a steady beat that tells the neighborhood that all is well dot. As we stand in the center of the square, the temperature begins to drop. This is the diurnal minimum, the coldest part of the night, just before the sun begins its ascent. The fog begins to settle. It becomes more ground-hugging, creeping over the doorsteps and curling around the bases of the lampposts. You can feel the cold seeping through your wool coat, a damp, heavy cold that encourages you to pull your collar higher. But even in this chill, there is a sense of immense stability. These houses were built to last for centuries. The foundations go deep into the London clay. The roofs are covered in heavy Welsh slate. The hearth and home is not just a building. It is a weight. It is the weight of tradition, of family, and of a social order that feels as permanent as the granite sets of the road. Look at the upper windows, the attics where the servants sleep. In a few minutes, the first stirrings of life will begin. A kitchen maid will wake in the cold, strike a match, and begin the ritual of drawing the fires. She will rake out the cold gray ash from the night before and lay the kindling for the new day. But for now, that hasn't happened. The glow is still fading. The city is still dreaming. The residential square is a cathedral of quietude, a place where the only movement is the swirling of the yellow mist and the slow, rhythmic dripping of the plane trees. You are a ghost in this world, a silent observer of a peace that is deep and absolute. The hearth has done its work. The city is warm, the doors are locked, and the night is holding its breath. Your own breathing is synchronized with the slow cooling of the bricks, a steady, calm rhythm that prepares you for your own deep sleep. We move from the center of the quiet, residential square back toward the iron-gated boundaries that separate the private world from the public. It is now 4:45 a.m. The yellow veil has grown so thick that the world exists only within a 5-foot radius. But through this golden gloom comes a sound that defines the order of the Victorian night, the heavy, rhythmic thud-clack. Thud-clack of a pair of regulation-issue leather boots. This is the beat. To understand Victorian London is to understand the order of the iron gates, a system of constant, walking surveillance designed to ensure that while the city sleeps, the law never closes its eyes. The figure emerging from the mist is a Metropolitan Police officer, often called a peeler or a bobby after Sir Robert Peel. He is a silhouette of solid, unmoving authority. Observe the details of his uniform, for they are designed for the boring reality of a 12-hour shift. He wears a heavy, indigo blue greatcoat made of box cloth, a wool so dense it is nearly waterproof and weighs over 10 pounds. The fabric doesn't rustle. It moves with a soft, muffled swish that absorbs the dampness of the fog. On his head is the iconic custodian helmet, reinforced with cork to protect against both the elements and the occasional brick. But the most important part of his equipment is the bullseye lantern hooked to his leather belt. As he walks, the lantern bumps rhythmically against his hip steady, metallic clink that serves as a metronome for his journey. A Victorian police beat is a masterpiece of repetitive geometry. An officer doesn't just wander. He follows a prescribed route at a pace of exactly 2.5 miles per hour. This is the rhythm of the law. Every 20 minutes, he returns to the same iron gate, the same street corner, and the same dark alleyway. This predictability is not a flaw. It is the point. It creates a mesh of safety across the city. As you walk behind him, you realize that the city is divided into these overlapping circles of movement. The officer stops at a heavy, iron gate leading to a private mews. He doesn't just look at it. He performs a ritual of the order. He reaches out a gloved hand, the leather is cold and damp, and he rattles the gate. Clang clink. He is checking the lock. He moves to the next door and tries the handle. He leans his shoulder against the wood to ensure the deadbolt is engaged. This mechanical checking of the city's fasteners is a hypnotic sensory process. The sound of 100 locks being tested throughout the night is the secret lullaby of London security. Occasionally, the officer stops. He senses a shadow that doesn't belong, or a door that sits a fraction of an inch too wide. He reaches for his lantern. The bullseye lantern is a fascinating ancient technology. It is a tin cylinder containing a reservoir of oil and a wick. The front is a thick, convex glass lens. He slides the shutter open with a sharp clack. Suddenly, a brilliant, focused beam of white-yellow light stabs through the fog. Because the air is so thick with soot and moisture, the light doesn't just travel. It illuminates the very substance of the night. You can see the individual swirls of the pea souper dancing in the beam like microscopic galaxies. He sweeps the light over an iron lock, then shutters it again. The world returns to its amber gloom. The contrast makes the darkness feel even softer, even more protective. The officer rarely speaks. In 1888, the silent system of patrolling is a point of pride. The goal is to hear the city rather than be heard. As you follow him, your ears become attuned to the astonishing variety of silences. There is the hollow silence of the stone archways. There is the soft silence of the parks, where the grass dampens the sound. And there is the metallic silence of the commercial streets, where the iron shutters of the shops reflect the distant sound of the river back at you. If the officer needs to communicate, he doesn't shout. He uses his rattle, or by 1888, his whistle. But tonight, there is no need. The city is behaving. The only sound is the rhythmic thud of his boots on the granite sets, and the occasional hiss of a gas lamp as he passes. Beneath its halo. London is a city of gates. Iron railings, spiked fences, and heavy chains are everywhere. These are the order of the iron gates. They represent the Victorian obsession with place. Everything has a place, and everything should stay behind its gate. The fog interacts with the iron in a way that is deeply calming. The moisture condenses on the cold metal, forming perfectly spherical droplets that hang from the spikes like black pearls. As the officer's lantern light catches them, they glint for a fraction of a second. To the boring history enthusiast, the ironwork itself is a story. These gates were cast in the great foundries of the north, shipped by rail, and bolted into the London clay. They are cold, unyielding, and permanent. They provide a physical boundary that reassures the subconscious mind. You are on the safe side of the gate. The law is on the street. The world is in its proper order. At the edge of the district, under a particularly large gas lamp, two silhouettes meet. It is our officer and the man from the neighboring beat. They don't shake hands. They perform a conference. They stand for a moment, their breath mingling in a single cloud of white steam. They exchange a few low-register words information about a broken lamp or a loose paving stone. Their voices are a low, vibrating murmur that doesn't carry more than a few feet. Then, with a synchronized nod, they turn and walk away from each other. This meeting is the link in the chain. It ensures that no part of the city is left unguarded. The rhythm continues. The circle is closed. As the officer continues his walk, notice his breathing. It is slow, deep, and steady, the breath of a man who has walked 10 miles tonight and has 4 more to go. It is a biological rhythm that mirrors the mechanical rhythm of his footsteps. We are now approaching the hour when the night watch ends. The sky is still black, but the quality of the darkness is changing. The yellow veil is becoming a deep, bruised purple. The officer doesn't hurry. He knows that his presence is most important in these final hours of vulnerability. He reaches the final gate of his circuit. He tests the lock, rattle clink. He checks the sky. He adjusts his heavy wool collar. He is the human anchor of the Victorian night. You are no longer a stranger in the fog. You are a ward of the watchman. You are wrapped in the order of the iron gates. The steady, heavy footsteps of the officer act as a heartbeat for your own relaxation. The city is locked. The lamps are hissing. The law is awake so that you don't have to be. The rhythm of the beat step, step becomes the rhythm of your own thoughts. It is a boring, predictable, and perfectly safe world. The iron is cold, the wool is warm, and the night is nearly done. We leave the rhythmic, heavy footsteps of the watchman behind, turning a corner where the yellow veil is illuminated by a different kind of glow. It is now 5:15 a.m. The air is at its sharpest, the damp cold of the Thames seeping through even the thickest wool. But here, on the edge of a wide thoroughfare, stands a humble monument to human comfort, the night coffee stall dot to the boring history observer. The coffee stall is a masterpiece of portable architecture. It is essentially a large, wooden cupboard on wheels, painted a deep, utilitarian green. As you approach, the first thing you notice is not the light, but the steam. It rises in thick, white plumes, clashing with the yellow fog and creating a localized microclimate of warmth. Stand near the edge of the stall's small wooden counter. This structure is the Victorian version of a late-night diner. The counter is worn smooth by the elbows of 1,000 night workers' printers from Fleet Street. Cabmen and laborers look at the equipment. The centerpiece is a massive, polished copper urn. It sits atop a small charcoal brazier. Inside the urn, gallons of water are kept at a perpetual simmer. You can hear it, a low, rhythmic gurgle and hiss as the steam escapes from the brass tap. The copper reflects the nearby gas lamp, glowing like a miniature sun in the center of the mist dot. Next to the urn are the stacks. These are thick slices of doorstep bread coarse. White loaves sliced an inch thick and spread with a generous layer of salted butter or dripping. They sit on a wooden board, their yeasty scent mixing with the acrid smell of the charcoal. The coffee served here in 1888 is not the artisanal roast of the modern world. It is a historical brew, deep, dark, an incredibly hot mixture of ground coffee beans and roasted chicory root. Watch the stall keeper as he works. His movements are a slow, repetitive dance. He takes a thick, handleless tin mug known as a can and places it under the tap. He turns the brass handle. Splosh! The dark liquid hits the bottom of the tin, sending up a fresh cloud of aromatic steam. The scent is astonishing in its complexity. It carries the bitterness of the chicory, the sweetness of the condensed milk, kept in a large, open tin, and the metallic tang of the heated copper. It is a scent that represents survival. It is the smell of the city's middle watch, a liquid fuel for those who keep London running while the rest of the world is tucked under down DUVTS. As you stand there. Imagine wrapping your hands around one of those tin mugs. The heat transfer is immediate. Tin is an excellent conductor, and the boiling liquid quickly warms the metal, which in turn warms your palms. This is the comfort of the night coffee. It is a sensory anchor. In a world where the fog has erased all landmarks, the heat of the mug is the only thing that feels real. The steam rises into your face, dampening your skin and warming your breath. Every sip is a slow, rhythmic process. The liquid is too hot to gulp. It must be savored in small, cautious draughts. Listen to the sound of the stall. It is a quiet place. The men standing here don't talk much. They are in a state of transitional peace. You hear the tink of a spoon against tin, the crunch of a crust of bread, and the soft whoosh of the charcoal being stirred. These are domestic sounds, transplanted into the heart of the dark. Industrial night. Observe the penny slice. For one large copper penny, A worker gets a mug of coffee and a slice of bread. The bread is not soft. It is substantial. It is baked in the massive brick ovens of the East End and delivered in the early hours. The butter is often replaced by dripping the rendered fat from a Sunday roast, seasoned with salt and pepper. To a modern palate, it sounds simple, but in the cold air of 1888, it is a high-calorie masterpiece. As the butter melts into the warm bread, it releases a rich, savory aroma that cuts through the sulfur of the fog. It is the scent of a kitchen in the middle of a street. It provides a psychological sense of home to men who have been walking the cold stones for 8 hours straight. The coffee stall is the great equalizer of the Victorian night. Here, the peeler we followed in the last chapter might stand beside a mudlark or a weary journalist. In the yellow fog, their social differences are blurred. They are all just shadows huddled around a copper urn. The stall keeper, a man in a grease-stained apron and a flat cap, treats them all with the same boring efficiency. He wipes the counter with a damp cloth in a rhythmic, circular motion, swish, 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 clearing the condensation and the crumbs. This repetition is hypnotic. The way he stacks the mugs, the way he pours the milk, the way he adjusts the charcoal, it is a performance that has happened every night for decades. It is a part of the city's ancient ritual, as dependable as the rising tide. The heat from the coffee stall creates a small hole in the fog. For a few feet around the urn, the yellow veil thins, allowing you to see the textures of the world more clearly. The wood grain of the stall, the condensation on the mugs, the weary lines on the faces of the men. But just beyond this circle, the mist is a solid wall. The steam from the coffee rises and merges with the fog, disappearing into the golden void above. It feels as though the stall is floating in space, a lonely island of light and heat in an infinite sea of amber shadow. It is now 5:30 a.m. The coffee stall is at its busiest. A hansom cab pulls up, the horse's nostrils flaring as it scents the oats in the nearby nosebags. The driver climbs down, his heavy coat stiff with frost, and calls for a special coffee with a double dose of sugar. As he drinks, the first ancient sign of morning appears, not the sun, but the sound. The distant, rhythmic rumble of the first morning wagons heading toward the rail terminals. The coffee stall is the bridge between the absolute silence of the 3 a.m. watch and the coming roar of the Victorian day. We leave the stall now, but the warmth stays with us. The taste of the chicory and the heat of the tin mug have settled into our senses. The steam has acted as a soft, white blanket, muffling the cold and preparing our bodies for rest. The city is still dark, but it is no longer hostile. The coffee stall has reminded us that even in the heart of the yellow veil, there is comfort, there is fire, and there is the steady, rhythmic care of one human for another. Your heart is warm. Your breath is steady. The penny stall is fading behind you, a glowing amber ember in the mist, leaving you in a state of perfect, cozy tranquility. We move away from the warm, steaming sanctuary of the coffee stall and head east, toward the legendary curve of Fleet Street. It is now 5:45 a.m. For the rest of London, the day is just beginning to stir. But for Fleet Street, the day is already over. This is the great silence, the brief window of time when the most frantic street in the British Empire draws along. Ink-stained breath. In 1888, Fleet Street is the heartbeat of global information. But tonight, draped in the yellow veil of the fog, it feels like an abandoned cathedral of industry. The architecture here is a dense mix of Tudor timber and Victorian stone. The narrow alleys, like Wine Office Court and Bolt Court, branching off like the dark capillaries of a brain, pause at the corner of Ludgate Circus. Breathe in slowly. The air here is distinct from any other part of London. The sulfur of the coal smoke is still present, but it is overlaid with the heavy, pungent perfume of the press. It is the scent of printer's ink, a complex mixture of linseed oil, lampblack, soot, and resin. It has a thick, oily, slightly sweet aroma that seems to cling to the fog. Mixed with this is the smell of wet newsprint, the organic, woody scent of paper made from esparto grass and wood pulp, dampened by the steam of the machines and the humidity of the night. There is also a faint metallic tang in the aerozone, produced by the massive friction of the belts and the heat of the gas-powered engines. This chemical cocktail is the breath of Fleet Street, a sensory reminder of the millions of words that have been birthed here in the last few hours. Peers through the darkened windows of a newspaper office, perhaps the Daily Telegraph or the Standard. In the basement, barely visible in the dim light of a single, turned-down gas jet, lie the machines. These are the Hoe-type revolvine configuration presses. They are massive, multi-ton structures of cast iron, brass, and steel. Only 2 hours ago, these machines were screaming. They were a blur of motion, with cylinders spinning at thousands of revolutions per hour, turning blank rolls of paper into the morning's chronicles. Now, they are silent. But they are not cold. If you were to touch the iron frame of a press right now, you would feel the residual heat, like the hearths in the residential squares. These machines possess an immense thermal mass. They are cooling down at a slow, measurable rate. You can hear the voice of the cooling metal, a faint, rhythmic tink, tink, tink as the iron contracts in the cold morning air. This is the heartbeat of a sleeping giant, a mechanical sigh of relief. As you walk down Fleet Street, the fog behaves differently here. The buildings are tall and crowded, creating canyons of ink. The mist pools in the narrow courts where Dr. Samuel Johnson once walked. Look at the ground. The granite sets here are stained. In the dim light, you can see dark streaks on the stones where ink-covered wagons once stood. The puddles in the gutters don't reflect the gold of the gas lamps. They are dark and opaque, like spilled oil. Listen to the architecture of echoes. Because the street is empty of its usual thundering horse traffic, the sound of your footsteps is amplified. Each clack of your boot against the stone travels up the brick walls, bouncing from the eaves of the Cheshire Cheese pub to the stone facades of the banks. It is a lonely, hollow sound, the sound of a street that is used to being loud, struggling to adapt to the silence. Underfoot, the fog has dampened the remnants of the night's work. Scraps of proof sheets and discarded galleys lie in the corners of the doorways. Observe how the paper interacts with the London damp. It doesn't blow away. It absorbs the moisture, becoming heavy and translucent. It clings to the stone steps like a second skin. On these scraps are the ghostly imprints of the day's history headlines about the Whitechapel mystery, reports from the Parliament at Westminster, and advertisements for Pear's soap. These words, once so urgent, are now literal trash, being slowly dissolved by the yellow veil. It is a boring but profound transformation, the conversion of information back into organic matter. The news is going to sleep, sinking into the mud of the city. In the upper floors, the composing rooms are dark. This is where the compositors, the aristocrats of labor, spend the night hand-setting. Lead type or working the early linotype. Machines. The air up there is heavy with a scent of type metal, an alloy of lead, tin, and antimony. It has a dry, dusty, metallic smell. Thousands of tiny lead letters sit in their wooden cases, resting in a specific, ancient alphabetical order. They are the silent soldiers of literacy, waiting for the afternoon when the cycle begins again. There is a profound sense of order here. Every word that London reads was assembled piece by piece in these dark rooms. The silence of the composing room is the silence of a library that has just been finished. Suddenly, a low rumble vibrates through the soles of your boots. Out of the fog comes a single heavy flatbed wagon. It is piled high with bundles of newspapers, tied with rough hemp twine. The horse is a massive shire, its hooves making a slow, rhythmic clop, clop, clop that sounds like a drum in the empty street. This is the dispatch. These papers are heading to the rail terminals St. Pancras, Euston and Waterloo, to be carried to the farthest reaches of the island dot as the wagon passes. You catch a gust of air, the scent of the news. It is fresh, cold, and intensely inky. Then the wagon vanishes into the mist, the sound fading until Fleet Street is once again a silent canyon of stone and shadow. The great silence of Fleet Street is a meditative space. It is the gap between the thought and the action. Between the writing of history and the reading of it, we walk past St. Bride's Church, the journalist's church, whose tiered spire looks like a wedding cake carved from soot and fog. The church bells are silent. The gas lamps are flickering in their final hours, and the yellow veil has turned a deep bruised indigo. Your mind is now as quiet as the dormant presses. The frantic energy of the world's information has been modeled, printed, and sent away. What remains is the smell of oil, the cooling of iron, and the steady, rhythmic breathing of a street that has done its duty. You are walking through the silence of the words. The ink is dry. The presses are still. The city is holding its breath before the dawn. We stand now at the intersection of a vast, invisible empire. It is 6 a.m., while the yellow veil of the fog continues to drift across the surface of London. A different world exists beneath your boots. To the boring history enthusiast, the most astonishing part of Victorian London is not what is built upward, but what is buried downward. Beneath the granite setts and the damp London clay lies a labyrinth of iron, brick, and steam. This is the industrial hum, the low-frequency vibration of a city that never truly stops breathing. Even in this quietest hour, the hidden engines are turning, the water is flowing, and the very earth beneath you is alive with mechanical purpose. Imagine, for a moment, that your vision could penetrate the pavement. Directly beneath us lies the work of Sir Joseph Bazalgette. Following the Great Stink of 1858, London embarked on the greatest civil engineering project in human history. They didn't just dig ditches. They built cathedrals of sanitation. Reach out your mind and feel the texture of the intercepting sewers. These are tunnels built of Portland cement and billions of red veneer bricks, laid in perfect concentric circles. The craftsmanship is so precise that a single drop of water can travel miles using nothing but the subtle, rhythmic pull of gravity. Listen to the sound of the deep pipes. It is a distant, hollow echo, the sound of the city's liquid pulse moving toward the treatment works at Abbey Mills. It is a slow, steady rush-hush, a white noise frequency that vibrates through the soles of your feet. This is the boring but vital rhythm that saved London from cholera. A subterranean river of order flowing beneath the chaos of the mist. In 1888, London is powered by a force that predates the widespread use of electricity, high-pressure water. Beneath the streets runs a separate network of 7-inch cast-iron pipes, pulsing with a pressure of 700 pounds per square inch. This is the London Hydraulic Power Company. This water doesn't come from a tap. It is a mechanical tool. It powers the elevators in the grand hotels, the heavy cranes at the docks, and the massive iron curtains of the theaters in the West End. If you place your ear against a cold iron lamppost, you can sometimes hear the singing of these pipes. It is a high-pitched, metallic hum, the sound of water under immense tension. It is a constant, unyielding pressure, a hidden engine that stretches across the entire metropolis. The physics of this network is a masterpiece of Victorian ancient technology, the idea that the entire city could be moved by the rhythmic pumping of water from a central station. Follow that vibration toward the horizon. where the great pumping stations like Crossness or Deptford stand. Inside these buildings, the hidden engines are at work. These are the beam engines massive, two-story structures of cast iron and polished brass. They have names like Victoria, Prince Consort, and Alexandra. Imagine the movement of the beam, a 30-ton piece of iron rocking slowly up and down, up and down. The sound is a deep, percussive thump hiss, thump hiss. The thump is the piston hitting the bottom of its stroke. The hiss is the release of spent steam into the condenser. It is a biological rhythm, like the heartbeat of a blue whale. This sound carries through the London clay for miles, a low-frequency growl that provides the background radiation of the Victorian night. It is the sound of absolute reliability. As we walk toward Farringdon, the ground begins to tremble in a new way. Beneath us lies the Metropolitan Railway, the world's first underground subway, in 1888. These are not the clean, electric trains of the future. These are steam locomotives, condensing their exhaust as they tunnel through the dark. Even though the passenger service hasn't fully begun for the morning, the engine moves are happening. Listen to the rumbly void. It is a sound that comes from deep within the earth, a muffled, rolling thunder. Rumble clock, rumble clock. You can see the faint, ghostly plumes of white steam escaping from the iron gratings in the sidewalk. The steam smells of hot oil and wet coal, a mechanical breath that rises to meet the yellow fog. The tunnels act as a giant pipe organ, amplifying the sound of the steel wheels against the steel rails until the very air around you seems to hum with the energy of the earth. There is a profound, boring beauty in the thermodynamics of this hidden world. Everything is in a state of heat exchange. The warm water in the pipes is heating the surrounding clay. The steam in the tunnels is warming the foundations of the buildings. The friction of the moving engines is creating a microscopic glow of energy. The city is a thermal battery. Even as the air above turns cold and the yellow veil settles into its pre-dawn chill, the world below remains at a constant humming warmth. This hidden heat is what prevents the pipes from freezing and keeps the city's heart beating. It is a comforting thought. Beneath the cold, damp uncertainty of the mist, there is a foundation of solid iron and burning coal. Somewhere in those tunnels, a flusher or a turncock is making his rounds. Like the watchman on the surface, he has a beat. He carries a lantern that casts long, distorted shadows against the curved brick walls. His world is one of ancient geometry and echoing water. He listens for the change in the hum, the slight whistle of a leaking valve, or the rhythmic thud of a water hammer. His work is a study in sensory detail. He navigates by the smell of the air and the vibration of the walls. He is the guardian of the city's invisible health, a silent inhabitant of the brick and iron forest. As we move away from the industrial centers and toward the final leg of our journey, the industrial hum begins to fade into a gentle vibration. It is no longer a noise. It is a feeling. The ground beneath you feels solid, supported by the massive engineering of 1,000 men. The pipes are full. The engines are turning. The water is flowing in its prescribed channels. The order of the iron gates on the surface is matched by the order of the brick tunnels. Below, your own body feels heavy and grounded, as if you are a part of the city's own thermal mass. The low-frequency hum has synchronized with your nervous system, smoothing out the jagged edges of the day. You are supported by miles of history and millions of tons of stone. The hidden engines are whispering to you. They are telling you that the world is being taken care of. The city is functioning. The rhythm is constant. You can let go now, sinking into the warmth of your own bed, as the industrial heartbeat of London carries you toward the light of the final hour. The long, amber-tinted night is finally beginning to yield. It is now 6:30 a.m. As we stand near the edge of the city, looking toward the eastern horizon, the yellow veil undergoes its final, most astonishing transformation. The heavy, sulphurous gold of the gaslit hours is being replaced by a cool, translucent indigo. This is the arrival of the first pale light, the bridge between the mystery of the past and the reality of the morning. Observe the fog. In the pre-dawn chill, the thermodynamics of the city begin to shift. As the sun, still hidden below the curve of the earth, begins to warm the upper layers of the atmosphere, the dense pea super begins to lose its grip on the cobblestones. The fog doesn't simply vanish. It lifts. It breaks apart into long, rhythmic ribbons of vapor that drift between the chimney pots like the ghosts of the night's coal fires. The air becomes clearer, sharper. You can now see the textures of the Portland stone on the buildings across the street, not as shadows, but as solid, weathered matter. The moisture that has clung to your coat all night begins to evaporate, leaving a faint, salt-like rime of London dust got in the boring history of the day. This is known as the blue hour. It is a period of perfect chromatic balance. The orange hiss of the gas lamps is still active, but their power is fading. Their light no longer creates massive halos. Instead, they look like small, tired embers. The sky above the rooftops of Cheapside is a deep, bruised violet, slowly fading into a pale, watery gray. This light is soft and shadowless. It reveals the city in its most honest state, soot-stained, magnificent, and wary. The red bricks of the warehouses appear dark and saturated, while the slate roofs glint with a metallic, leaden sheen. It is a palette of tranquility, a visual lullaby of cool tones. Listen to the changing soundscape. The industrial hum of the underground pipes is now joined by the first acoustic signals of the day. But these are not the harsh noises of the modern world. In 1888, the morning begins with a soft, organic percussion. You hear the chink-chink of milk glass, the milkman in his light float, his pony moving with a brisk morning trot. You hear the rhythmic swish-scrape of a housemaid's broom on a stone doorstep 3 houses down. These sounds are repetitive and small. They don't break the silence. They merely decorate it. They are the rhythmic signals that the world is safe enough to wake up to dot as the light strengthens. The stone giant of St. Paul's and the iron skeletons of the bridges regain their silhouettes. They look different in the morning light, less like monsters and more like monuments. The spire of St. Mary le Bow emerges from the mist, its ancient bells still silent, waiting for the proper hour. The rooftops of London, a forest of thousands of clay chimney pots, stand in silent formation against the gray sky. Each one is a small monument to a family's hearth. The geometry of the city, the angles of the gables, the curves of the arches, and the vertical lines of the rain pipes becomes a soothing, mathematical pattern for the eyes to follow. One by one, the flickering pulses are extinguished. You don't see the lamplighter return, but the light simply ceases to be. The hiss of the gas stops. The brass burners cool down. The transition from artificial light to natural light is the final, boring miracle of the walk. It happens so slowly that you cannot pinpoint the exact moment when the gas became redundant. The world has shifted from a world of interior light to a world of exterior light. This shift signals the brain that the journey is over. The yellow veil has been folded up and put away for another night dot as we walk the final few steps of our journey. The Victorian world begins to dissolve. The sounds of the hansom cab and the scent of the chicory coffee are now just echoes in the corners of your mind. The modern shore is not a place of noise, but a place of absolute stillness, your own room, your own bed, your own breath. The history of the 19th century has acted as a heavy, velvet curtain, shielding you from the stresses of the present. You have walked 10 miles through the mist, felt the vibration of the great bells, and smelled the harvest of the night markets. Your body is tired in that ancient, honest way that only a long walk can produce. The pale light has now filled the room. The city of 1888 is back in the history books, its granite sets and iron gates waiting for your next visit. The whispering Thames is silent. The industrial hum has faded into a gentle, internal pulse. The mist is gone. The night is done. You are safe on the shore of sleep. Close your eyes now. The last thing you see is a single pale blue light on the horizon, the promise of a new day that you don't have to face yet. For now, there is only the weight of the blankets, the rhythmic rise and fall of your chest, and the perfect, boring piece of history. London is asleep. And now, so are you.